Before we get into this video, I want to preface it with something. Hi, I'm Riser. I'm a bully victim. In case you don't know, and honestly I can't blame you cause you'd have to scroll for quite a while. God damn, I've made a lot of shit, huh? Anyway, if you scroll down to here, you'll find my video called Please Live, in which I go into my struggles with bullying as a kid. Here are the cliff notes. I was bullied to the point where I tried and failed to kill myself. To this day, 2 decades later, I am still feeling the ramifications of the bullying I went through, and I have a burning hatred for the people who did bully me. So why do I bring this up? Well, my dear viewer, that's because today we're covering a comic about a bully victim taking revenge on those who wronged him. And you would think for someone like me, with the experience I have, I'd be a perfect fit for this comic, right? In the profound words of Sun Tzu, fucking Lamau. Today I wanna talk about the manhwa Rooftop Swordmaster. Now, if the name sounds familiar, it's because apparently someone else called Living Dead Man has already reviewed the comic, and their video has made the rounds on the internet. I haven't watched the video because I didn't want my experience to be influenced by other people's opinions, because that's what an honest review is and not whatever this brainlet here think it is. This is still hands down the dumbest thing I've ever heard said about any of my videos, and it's not even close. I will wake up in a cold sweat thinking of this dumb shit. Anyway, the title of the video is A Manhwa So Bad It's Dangerous. I almost wish I didn't have this structured way of naming my videos because goddamn, I want to watch that video now. That's a really good title. Anyway, this comic was suggested to me and I kept hearing how bad it was, so of course I had to check it out. And to be completely honest, had it not been for the negative press about the comic, I don't think I'd have even bothered looking at it. I mean, what the fuck is this name? Rooftop Swordmaster. Boy, can't wait to read my favorite manga, Medieval Swordmaster, watch my favorite movie, Apartment Building Punch Master, or play my favorite video game, Swordmaster. Rooftop Swordmaster is written by Chogang Holger and drawn by Kim Ui-kwon and published through Toon Plus. That's frankly all I could find about this comic. Shit, I don't even know if this right now was accurate or not. It basically has no digital footprint besides that. I tried getting some insight in how the comic was received by the general public, and despite everyone I had talked to hated it, it seems like a lot of people really liked the comic, giving it glowing reviews like,
I already read the manhwa. This is a true revenge story. MC want, MC get. He basically kill everyone that get in his way. Not like some revenge novel in Japan. Recommend to read. MC train with the sword until he become Hulk and he wrecked the police lol.
Yeah, I don't know what's going on, but the fans of this comic are on some next level shit. I had people absolutely glazing the protagonist of this comic, straight up arguing whether or not the female romantic interest was fit to suck the protagonist off. People saying the comic is Korean Berserk. And whatever this is. Also, while looking for this, I found this and bro, ain't no way. Whom's the fuck is this? Nothing ever looks like this in the comic, not even close. This dripped out pretty boy is nowhere to be found in the comic. Instead, we get Hulk with a sword drawn with gritty black lines and a fucked up haircut. This is basically me versus how I portray myself on Tinder. So let's start this season out with a bang and check out Rooftop Swordmaster. Oh yeah, I guess I should explain that, shouldn't I? Huh. So, if you watch the show for any amount of time, the typical structure of the show has typically been the writing, the art, and the characters. I have considered this for actual ages, and now I'm finally doing something about it. The characters? Gone. I fucking hated doing that segment. I legit only had it because I was freestyling in my first video and accidentally said the characters, and I figured I'd just roll with it. But as time has gone on, it's always been the biggest chore when doing videos. It was like, why have a separate section for it when I could just cover how the characters are written in the writing and how they're designed in the art? So yeah, the characters are gone, and instead we're replacing it with the first impressions, which is essentially gonna be me going through the first portion of a comic to see what I find.
Plus, I also feel that first impressions are just so important when it comes to webcomics. In fact, I've mentioned as much multiple times in my videos.
So the comic begins in earnest when a scrawny young boy is rushed to the hospital covered in a myriad of wounds, cuts and bruises. Full disclosure, this state never gets explained. We see some cops who the comic will just kind of forget halfway through the comic. After finding out our scrawny young protagonist, Tak Se-young, has been in a coma for 9 months, we get clued in on what happened. Apparently, Se-young was bullied to hell and back by 8 middle schoolers, all with stupidly influential parents. These parents made it so that the 8 middle schoolers were practically left untouched, and the story about how they bullied Se-young to this point was effectively buried. As a result of this, Se-young's parents decided to protest through self-immolation, and the story thus became impossible to cover up. Because of this, the 8 kids were sent out of the country for some special education or something, I don't know, the comic never really covers it, as a form of punishment, leaving Se-young behind with a battered body and a thirst for revenge.
Honestly, the comic does a great job in setting up the plot for a revenge story. I mean, there's even this moment here that I really like where it shows the different 8 bullies' silhouette in different colors. So it really gives you the feeling like these are the 8 people that Se-young has to attack.
We skip ahead in time to where this dude is telling a nice elderly lady that she can by no means ever go up to the top floor. Again, we never find out who this guy is, nor what his deal is, nor how Tak Se-young, the inhabitant of the top floor, got this special deal on the apartment. It's speculated in the comments that it's a compensation for the whole bullying thing, but it's never actually said outright. Anyway, it seems like in the 2 years that have passed, Se-young has become a shut-in, spending all his days looking up stuff. Through the power of hindsight, I now know that he's looking up the different companies that the bully's parents run, but up to this point we know neither the first nor last name of these people, nor their positions. Also, I gotta mention this, but the video of Se-young's parents setting themselves on fire apparently got over 7 million views on YouTube. You mean to tell me I can't say fuck in a video, but someone setting themselves on fire in protest against the government gets a free pass and no viewer suppression?
What? You're implying that YouTube sucks at upholding its standards fairly to everyone? That might just be the most realistic thing in this entire comic.
So Se-young gets visited by a nurse who, again, will just kind of disappear off of the face of the earth after a while. She's trying to get Se-young to go outside, but to no avail. Instead, Se-young just spends all his time being inside, which I think he's been learning how to become a super hacker. So, again, this is something that only makes sense in hindsight, but he tries to access something through this app here, and at first I didn't know what the fuck this was, but it turns out it's legally distinct fence, not Facebook. He tries to access a group chat that he's not part of, which begs the question how he knows it exists, and after some hacking, he gains access to the chat. Quick note, this ability to hack is also not something that is ever brought up again. In the chat, he finds out that the 8 bullies are soon coming back to Korea, and as if timed by God himself, suddenly a sword comes crashing from orbit down and impales itself into the floor outside Se-young's apartment.
I have a lot to say about this, but let's continue a little bit.
For whatever reason, Se-young refuses to try and pull the sword out and instead goes back into nap for some reason. During his sleep, he's shown images of a mighty army spearheaded by a lone warrior carrying the same sword as the one that just appeared before him. The warrior continues to slay a whole armada of demons before Se-young wakes up to find the sword is now on fire. This is where the comic, for whatever reason, decides it wants to try its hands at comedy, which it frankly hasn't really set up at all. All of a sudden, Se-young will start acting all silly with trying to keep the fire from the blade in check and doing seemingly everything in his power besides picking the sword up to deal with it. Why not just pick up the sword? Also, where does this humor come from? Se-young has from frame 1 been a tortured soul and is now rightfully so gloomy, dejected, and refusing any sort of closeness. Where the fuck does this wacky shit come from? The comic tries to show off Se-young as this guy who's spent the last 2 years doing nothing but focusing on revenge. He doesn't clean his apartment, he doesn't train. All he's doing is keeping tabs on the bullies who ruined his life. And here he is doing wacky hee-hee-ha-ha holy water hijinks. Anyway, eventually Se-young has enough and grabs a hammer and puts it to the sword. The head flies off and crashes into the nearby wall and... Okay, this looks like dog shit.
Now, we'll be going into all of this in the art segment, but let me just vent a little bit.
In case it's not blatantly obvious. Hey you, artist. Artist that's drawing while listening to this video. Hey, time to look up at the screen for a moment. There you go. Hey, hope your art is doing good. Anyway, in case it's not blatantly obvious, this comic has some very characteristic crude black line art. That's what you're seeing here in the crack. Only problem is, it clashes horribly with two other things, being the clean thin lines of the texture used for the wall tiles and the 3D rendered lines of the hammer. The broken off hilt of the hammer hasn't even been properly deleted. It's just been removed, but there's no outline to indicate it's been broken. But let's move on, because we got a lot of ground to cover. Se-young finally has enough and grabs a sword, and memories from the warrior he saw before suddenly comes flooding into his brain, all telling him to stop being a bitch and pick up the sword to exact his revenge. And Se-young does just that. After a quick Google search, he finds some training regimen online and starts working out with the sword. He swings it around despite being barely able to lift it off of himself prior. He starts doing push-ups with the sword on his back and starts going up and down the stairs of his apartment block. And after just a couple of weeks, he's able to swing the sword no problem. He's also grown much taller, which is absolutely not how that works. And I actually went and tried to Google it to make sure I was right in saying that. So if I didn't look insecure about my height before, now I also have a search history fucking me over.
You know that thing that's one of the biggest punchlines in all of One Punch Man about how Saitama got his powers and how it was just a very rudimentary workout session for a couple of years? Well, this comic demands that you take it as seriously as a fucking heart attack.
Se-young spends the next 2 years continuing his training until one day the 8 middle schoolers now return home and... Good lord, this looks bad. Is this bitch here just a heroin addict or something? Why are her arms so skinny? Why does she whole ass have that Cullen free face? What's with this dude on the left's head? It looks like he's wearing a mask, like his skull is too long.
Would you mind if I asked you about your face again?
Yeah, anyway, 6 of the 8 are back, and they're kind of making a big deal that the two quote-unquote leaders of the group, So-hyun and So-jung, are not with them. It turns out they're not with the group because So-hyun is becoming buddy-buddy with the Yakuza. Don't worry, because this too is never brought up again. Like, they show Soo-hyun talking with the Yakuza and being given all these men, so I kind of figured, oh, this is how Soo-hyun is gonna get some goons that Se-young will have to fight his way through to get to him. But after this conversation, the Yakuza never really appear in the comic ever again. Anyway, two of the bullies want to grab Se-young and get some revenge on him, as they see him being the reason they had to deal with being abroad for so long. So they send two goons to go and pick him up, but then they mysteriously disappear. We then see how Soo-hyun and Soo-jung return to Korea, but Soo-jung gets carried away by the Korean Secret Service. This too never gets brought up again.
Are you seeing a trend here?
Also, it's just so fucking weird. We'll get more into the pacing of the comic later, but this just boggles my mind. I love a good revenge plot, and I'm all for not following those rules to the letter and rather have fun with the formula. Typically in these revenge plots, you got a group of bad people, but there's one or two who are the biggest bads, who are typically saved for last, kind of like a final boss if you would. And for the longest time, it seems like this comic is trying to make these two just that. Soo-hyun is friends with the Yakuza and gets all these men to use as goons. Soo-jung is the daughter of a presidential candidate, so she's the biggest profile of the group. And the two of them are said to only come back to Korea later, so they're kind of safe until near the end. It seems like the building blocks are there to follow this typical formula. But then the blocks are just ignored. Soo-hyun's men are just forgotten, Soo-jung is by no means one of the last to go, and the two of them return to Korea just a couple of days after the rest before shit starts hitting the fan.
There's a saying that goes, never change horses midstream, and that honestly feels like what this comic did. The beginning of the comic feels like they're setting up for something much different than what it ended up playing out as.
Due to the two goons disappearing, the company they work for now shows up ready to find out what happened and deal with whoever dealt with them. Also, a Sentai hero is here for some reason. When they finally reach the top floor, they're quickly dealt with by this hulking monster, and when the cops later come to investigate, we finally get to see the hulking creature Se-young has become.
Now, time to be charitable.
I have gone back and forth on trying to explain away Se-young's transformation. I kept reading and reading in the hopes to find this answer, and before I knew it, I had read all of the comic. So I guess it's up to me to fill in the blanks. Now, I could just write this off as a plot hole, but let's give it the benefit of the doubt. Seeing we are dealing with a paranormal element in the form of the sword, I assumed this ridiculous growth was due to the power of the sword. There's never anything with the sword that indicates it would speed up someone's growth whatsoever. I could kind of see it explained away with how Se-young would later become such a capable fighter, because he'd essentially inherit the memories and thus fighting style of the sword's previous owner, but the muscle growth and even more size is just never touched on. It legit feels like the comic wants us to believe that Se-young, after a couple of years of doing push-ups, swinging a sword around, and running up and down a flight of stairs, is able to become so freakishly huge he's able to brush off mortar strikes, throw cars with minimal effort, and clearing entire city blocks with a single bound.
Bro, give me whatever YouTube video this motherfucker found on Google. It must have been straight gas.
Also, I was audibly guffawing at this, but you know how Se-young now has a little pile of bodies on his floor and the cops found it? You wanna know what happens to Se-young as a result of this? Nothing. And the reason is the stupidest shit ever. Man gets off scot-free because he's a minor. Friendly reminder, 8 kids bullied this dude, and despite having literally the most influential people in the entire world as parents, they were still removed from the country for multiple years. Se-young maimed and beat a group of people within an inch of their life, and he's suddenly untouchable because he's a minor? The fuck happened to that charity when those 8 people were thrown out of the country? You mean to tell me Se-young just gets let off completely because he's a minor? I mean, look at all this blood. There's no way he didn't kill some of them.
Also, I don't know why this bothers me so much, but the water hose is gone. You used it for so many jokes, bro. How do you not remember it?
Now that the bullies have made their move, it's finally time for Se-young to set his plan into motion. So he finds one of the bullies, Kim Chang-soo, and holds him hostage to get as many eyes on him as possible. This includes bystanders, the press, cops, and even these wacky pilotless helicopters. Se-young then declares war on not just the kids who bullied him, but also the parents and siblings of those kids. And he then proceeds to cut off Chang-soo's head for everyone to see. What then follows is a bunch of fighting in which Se-young works as a one-man army to carve his way through armies of cops and soldiers, all just doing their jobs. This is where I think the comic kind of discarded the original plot. Cause, again, it seems like at first there were plans to make this a little more grounded and more of a typical revenge story that would start out small and grow bigger. But the literal first confirmed kill by Se-young, and he's now already public enemy number 1, fighting cops, SWATs, PMCs, and Korea's own military. Like, you went from 1 to a billion instantly. Like, this train is no longer on the rails. It is so far off the rails, it is no longer in the gravitational pull of the planet. Like, you go from killing your first target to killing hundreds of people, some of which are the Korean Secret Service. Like, this escalation and pacing is not boring, not even a little, but it's not boring now. But I'll go behind the curtain and say that it will become boring later, because there's no real way to escalate from here.
There are only so many tanks that Se-young can destroy with one fell swoop that it just becomes another tank and it ceases to be awesome, you know?
I could technically continue, but this is honestly where I feel the first impressions should end, because you've now seen what the comic is. It's some weird power fantasy for bully victims. But it is so outlandish and too interested in getting into the power fantasy to ground it or make it interesting. From this point forward, it just becomes the same shit again and again. The bullies and the parents prove they are terrible people, claim they are super safe, and then Se-young shows up and kills them. It never really evolves from here. There's no kill that's more satisfying than the other, no moment where Se-young feels conflicted about it, no change in his strategy or form. We don't learn anything new about the sword, it's literally just Se-young kills bad people repeated again and again.
There's also this small asterisk. Don't worry too much about it, it's just a silly nitpick, but Se-young is killing people by the bucket loads, even people who believe that they're doing the right thing and are just protecting their families, but no, Se-young is just super cool, right?
Rooftop Swordmaster is a revenge story. It devolves into a power fantasy, but at its core in the beginning, it's a revenge story. And revenge stories play specifically on one core thing. People who have been wronged get justice. We love revenge stories because we see someone being unjustly treated and we see the wrong party get their revenge on those who wronged them. It's cathartic to see the bad people get their comeuppance. We know why Guts has such a hate boner for Griffith because, holy shit, we want to see it happen because we know the bond Guts had with those Griffith betrayed. We know how much he idolized Griffith. The key important thing here that I'm not so subtly hinting at is that we are emotionally invested in this revenge. We, the audience, are sad to see what happened to the Band of the Hawk and the characters we love. We love Casca, so to see what Griffith does to her fills us with disgust and it angers us as well. This is why we are invested in Guts' revenge, because it's also sort of our revenge. John Wick is similar. We get to see how sad John is over his wife's passing and the levity the dog she leaves him gives him. And when the crooks kill his dog, we even get to see this poor little thing crawled up to him to die by his side.
If you did not want to see this fucking cunt's head on a spike, we did not watch the same movie.
I talk about this personal investment because it is something that Rooftop Swordmaster tries but fails at. It does a pretty good job at first. Bullies are something we can always agree with are bad people, spoiled, privileged, rich kids even more so. And then you add the parents burning themselves in protest, like, you're getting us invested, right? Well, this is where it stops. We see Tak Se-young get his ass beat for bumping into one of the bullies, and we infer from another ass kicking he gets later that it's become a common occurrence, but that's about it. We never see the bullying. We never see Se-young being pushed to the end of his rope. Bullying does not suck because it's a single occurrence that really sucked. Bullying sucks because it's oppressive, it's isolating, it's a constant terrible thing that follows you. You end up feeling you got no one to turn to, you doubt the ones you can turn to, you feel there's no way out, and the ability to solve the issue is outside of your grasp until there's only one ability left. And
again, like I said, I know this shit. Trust me when I say, I know this shit.
In other words, we know that Se-young has beef with these 8 bullies and we can understand it, but we do not feel invested in it. We do not pity Se-young, we simply do not get the time to do it. Heck, you wanna know how Se-young ends up in the terrible state he's in when we first see him? Bitch, me too! We never see that. The closest thing on the timeline is we see someone else who would probably end up in that situation, but we never see what got him in it. And what's goofier is that you want to know when Se-young decides to get revenge? When he gets the sword. Revenge is not brought up even once before that. He keeps tabs on the bullies, sure, but the extent of what he does with that information is limited to going to bed and crying. It is only when he gets the means to revenge that he starts pursuing it.
Which is just some bitch-made shit, if I may say so, because what were you gonna do if you didn't get the sword? You were just gonna keep hacking Facebook and then go and cry and have naps?
Revenge is such a personal topic, especially when the revenge is paid in blood. It is an eye for an eye, it is a personal vendetta. That's why it's so important that we feel the person involved. We need to feel his rage, we need to understand him. We can't have a personal story while being denied access to the person it involves. It's fine for the sake of the plot to skip the training montage, or in general the person involved getting the means for their revenge, because it is at its core not what it's about. What is important is the catharsis of seeing our hero get the justice they deserve, and sometimes also the mental state revenge puts them in, to highlight whether or not revenge is a good thing or not. It's about the emotions involved, the personal drama. But when Se-young first cuts off the head of the first bully, we are left completely estranged from Se-young. What does he feel? What is he thinking? What races through his mind now that he's gotten some of his revenge? Does it leave him feeling fulfilled or hollow? Does it feel good or bad? Heck, how does he feel about the act of fucking killing someone?
But hey, as long as we can get him doing cool flips with a dumb fucking sword, then that's all that matters, right?
I'll say that the comic does a great job in getting you invested in the story, but it is frankly where the compliments I can give the comic's writing ends. The holes very quickly start to show, and it frankly feels like there at one point were plans, but those plans were then later scrapped. I've already mentioned multiple instances of, hey, this thing happened, but don't worry about it because it never becomes important. And it's not even just in the quote-unquote boring shit either. Like, there's this moment where Se-young goes into... he goes into wolf mode or whatever the fuck, right? Yeah, he does this and never does it again. He never uses any other form either, for that matter. There was frankly not any reason for him to do it either. It's just there because the writer got an idea, thought it would be cool, and then forgot about it the next day. Or how about the time where 2 cops are killed by someone who was locked up at the time it happened? Several characters are also introduced, but nothing is done with them. When Sejong goes on a murder spree, his aunt and doctor are just kind of thrown to the side. They'll every now and again pop up to be used as a bargaining chip against Sejong, but that's it. Which is just so... it honestly just shows where the writer's head was at. They did not want a story where a bully victim gets revenge on those who wronged him. They wanted to make the coolest guy ever and had the mental maturity to equate that to just how big and strong is he.
These are the same people who will fight to the death over which anime protagonist is the strongest. The kind of people who will love Gojo from Jujutsu Kaisen just because his number is bigger, rather than loving people like Todo, who has weapon-grade autism and does suplexes.
Frankly, you had a golden opportunity here. You have 2 characters that knew Sejong before his transformation, who know about his struggles and the shit he's been through. 2 normal-ass characters who can be the emotional mouthpiece to Sejong, seeing you're so insistent on not giving us anything in terms of what Sejong thinks and feels. Characters that could help ground an otherwise alien and murderous psychopath. But instead of doing that, these characters are just used as bargaining chips, and instead a 3rd character suddenly has to be shoehorned in to give any resemblance of depth to Sejong, and she too is a super capable killing machine. The comic is, in other words, in the fucking stratosphere. There's nothing that grounds it. Sejong is a fucking steroid with a poorly made sword who kills people indiscriminately, and we're supposed to cheer for him because he's so strong.
Also, the thing that sparks the whole thing is that the guy got bullied. Yes, it sucks, but the reaction is so exaggerated to the action that caused it that it's so fucking silly.
I want you to look at Bon Clay or Senor Pink from One Piece. These 2 are the goofiest, dumbest motherfuckers I have ever seen. They are also the coolest characters in all of One Piece. Why? Because it's not about what strength you have and what you do with that strength, but why? I should not be hyped for a fat dude with sunglasses and a bib doing Isuna drops, but I am because I'm given an insight into his character. I should look at Bon Clay and say he's nothing but comic relief, but this man time and time again goes above and beyond emotionally that one of the latest things he does in the series is a billion times more cool than Luffy punching real good. I know why these 2 fight. I know why they get up. I am invested in their reasons and I'm allowed to feel the same feelings as them. I am connected with these characters, and I start feeling their resolve as if it was my own. With Sejong, I frankly lose all emotional connection with the guy after the time skip, cause I no longer know who or what the fuck he is. For all I know, this might be some weird mutant who the real Sejong tasked to do his job for him. The comic was compared to Berserk, but in Berserk, I know exactly who Guts is in the first 2 chapters after his birth. I know why he gets up in the morning. I know why he swings his sword. I damn near know what Pokemon starter he would pick if given the chance. With Sejong, I know nothing. Before the time skip, I get he's angry, but I'm not connecting with it because I don't get to experience it. And after the time skip, there are effectively no more emotions left, because now it's all about stupid wolf forms and punching police cars.
Imagine being so fucking detached that you call this Korean Berserk. Bro, just say you don't know how to read. I think it'll be easier for you.
Also, the pacing is just something to be studied, because I'm legit dumbfounded. 1 kill in, and all of a sudden we're now fighting tanks and helicopters. Some of the 8 bullies essentially gets killed off panel, Soo-jung and Soo-hyun, who were set up as big important figures, both get killed off somewhere in the middle of the comic, and when the last dude is killed, Se-young immediately gets captured afterwards while tripping on meth. And no, I am not kidding. Also, there's no real reward for the bully killing. Like, you feel nothing. At one point, I even wondered why they kept saying there were only so many characters left, cause I totally missed one of the countless people Se-young had killed was a bully. The only one we truly see singled out as someone who bullied Se-young was Soo-hyun, and that is despite these bullies being so diverse. Like, we find out one of the bullies had the hots for Se-young's girlfriend, but that is never brought up ever again. Why couldn't he have been a creepy weirdo who did something bad involving her? That'd be a unique angle, and you could tailor his downfall to the thing he bullied Se-young with. Or shit, one of the bullies is the president's daughter, but instead of touching on how she felt untouchable due to this position and could be up to some absolutely heinous shit that her dad would then cover up, it's instead a layup to where the comic goes after all the bullies are dead.
Because remember, Se-young doesn't just want revenge on the bullies, but also the bullies' parents and their siblings, whose only crime was to be born into the same family. This guy fucking sucks.
He beats people up, he's so cool, literally me, moving on.
This was when it fully hit me that this could no longer be qualified as a revenge story. Like, what? We are now supposed to cheer for a guy taking down fucked up politicians because they're responsible for the fucked up society that allowed the bullies to get away with what they did? Hey, Se-young, did you not get away scot-free for multiple manslaughter earlier? Can we expect you to let yourself be arrested once this is all over to show an example of how society should work? Also, the parents? Really? There's absolutely no personal relation between them and Se-young other than they tangentially also hurt his family? But it is frankly just an excuse so they can keep upping the ante despite it moving straight up into fantasy territory. Suddenly there's androids who just fuck off. The android also had a much stronger younger brother who is never brought up again. Suddenly there's a drug that turns you into a super soldier. They try to explain that, oh no, this drug will most likely fuck you up. But we never see that. And this is all while the comic makes such a big deal that every high-standing official wants to get their greedy paws on Se-young so they can replicate his strength, even though you got similar means right fucking there. Shit, you even succeeded with a guy. Your drug seemed to work with no side effect. Just do that again. What the fuck?
Also, instead of being a legit threat, because the cyborg is the only one who can go toe-to-toe with Se-young, nah, can't have that. Too interesting. They're buddies now.
Also, what sort of feeling am I supposed to feel when I am reading this comic? At first you're losing yourself in the chaos, but as time goes on, it just becomes boring because there are no stakes. Like, what? I'm gonna worry if Se-young is gonna make it out of an encounter against riflemen when the man has literally brushed off getting shot at by tanks, been buried in cement and thrown through multi-story buildings. Motherfucker walked off being coated in white phosphor. Like, at least Superman has kryptonite. Also, I guess the writers just started getting annoyed with having to make up a reason for why Se-young could survive all the attacks he faces. Cause at first we see him blocking attacks and dodging enemy fire, but near the end he just lets it brush off of him. So you got a guy who's essentially immortal and all-powerful, a dude who's essentially turned on God mode in the console menu, so whenever he has to square off against someone, I couldn't help but wonder why I should give a fuck. Like, what could possibly stop Se-young from accomplishing his objective? There's nothing he has to overcome, no limits he has to push, no enemy he has to defeat. It's just so fucking boring.
I just don't get it. Why do they make it shitty?
The writing of this comic is a joke and a half. It is a transparent power fantasy written at the seat of the writer's pants. I don't recall a single instance where so many plot lines are just dropped on the floor. Where's the Yakuza? Where are Se-young's hacking skills? Where are the cops from the beginning? Where are the different forms that Se-young could use? Where's the doctor? Who was the guy telling people not to go to the top floor of Se-young's building? Where's the android brother? Where's the fucking water hose? And these are just the ones I can remember off of the top of my head. It's frankly also just so fucking lazy. Hey, how's Se-young gonna get out of this situation? Raw strength. How's he gonna get out of this situation? Raw strength. How about this situation? Yeah, I'll take raw strength for 400. Who's Se-young's enemy this time? Well, it's some special soldier unit. How about this time? A different special soldier unit. What did he get attacked by? This super strong weapon. And then he gets attacked by another but different super strong weapon. Like, it is just the same fucking elements repeated ad nauseum for 92 chapters.
It takes a special amount of fuck up to make me, the guy who will actively make every video game harder for myself if it means I can punch stuff instead of fighting it with guns or swords. Hate the guy who overcomes every obstacle through brute force alone. But here we are. So let's rewind a little bit. Right, here. Oh, hold on. Here. Remember this?
This is my part 3 video on Rascals. Now in it, we talked about how Godai would use Clip Studio assets for his backgrounds. And while I did mention it in passing, I feel it wasn't talked about enough because it is actually a much more interesting topic than people give it credit for. Now, since this video, I have gotten my education as a graphic designer and worked in the field of graphic design and worked with multimedia for the better part of 2 years. So I feel I'm much better equipped to say
that this still sucks. But this sucks. But it doesn't have to suck. Let me explain.
So, since my latest video, I have started taking up Blender and 3D modeling. I have done so primarily because I wanted to push myself to learn something new, and because some absolute miserable cunt said that you can't just learn something if you set your mind to it, and I wanted to prove them wrong, because I'm that petty. And I dare say that I have succeeded in proving them wrong. I mean, look at these delicious donuts. But enough gloating. Since learning more about 3D, I quickly found the limits of the programs I was using and the benefits of things like add-ons. Add-ons are tools that fiddle with the program's code to essentially use the program in a different way than it is initially intended to. This, for example, makes fluid simulations much easier to do, as the fluid simulation in Blender is rather limited and complicated to use. So there's add-ons like Flip Fluids that makes it a breeze to work with. There's add-ons for better movements of camera, lighting, assets, materials. If you can think of it, someone has made an add-on to make that process much easier. It's to the point where you cannot convince me professionals haven't used add-ons for their multi-million-dollar projects.
And the reason why you can do that is because, many of the add-ons will just straight up have on their website the different movies they've been part of, and there's some big AAA blockbusters here.
But then the question becomes, is this cheating? I mean, they're using these tools to help them, they're not making it from the ground up, so surely they're cheating, right? Well, in that case, I have cheated multiple times throughout my career. If that is the case, the industry standard for graphic design is cheating. When I find a stock image to superimpose a mock-up screen on a phone to give a client an idea of how their website is gonna look on a phone, that should be considered cheating too, right? But that's just not how it works. Now, I want to preface this by saying this is my opinion, and I would actually love to hear yours on the subject, especially because the landscape has changed over the years.
Once upon a time, using references were kind of scoffed at, and this channel has actively made an effort to ridicule people who trace without disclosing it. But Nowadays, using references is actually expected, and tracing is encouraged as long as you disclose it.
The long and short of it is that these tools exist for a reason. It's not to do the work for you, it is to make your creative job easier. The important thing to remember in these scenarios is that you use these tools to help, not to replace. And sure, then the question becomes how much you do and how much your tool does, and that becomes a whole different debate. If you make an AI image and call yourself an artist because you punched in a bunch of prompts to get the same generic looking bullshit as the next talentless fuck, then no, you didn't lift a pencil even once. You essentially commissioned a robot artist to do the work for you. It would be like if I commissioned my good friend Lautaro for art, got the art, and said I had created it because I provided him with what I wanted and a reference. In other words, there has to be at least some work on the artist's side. The artist has to have used the tool to an extent where their own style or personal expression comes through instead of having the tool do literally all the work. That is why I raised a stink in my Draconia Chronicles video about Avencry taking the credit for making animations for Kimono Cafe. Even though both they and I are essentially using pre-existing templates to make a thing, they just popped some images into a website that then did the work for them, whereas I reverse engineered an After Effects file to make it near indistinguishable from the original that I bought to make it fit my style. I put in the work, they didn't. But even then, that's just them using a tool, and we wouldn't really have a problem if it wasn't because they then also tried to advertise this as if Avencry had done all the work. What work? You can tell from this side by side that the only difference is the color and the pictures. That's why I made the comparison with tracing. And speaking of tracing, we can see this issue in that as well. You can use a reference and try and copy the reference wholesale, and that'll be... okay, it'll be a little sketchy, but it'll be fine to an extent. But tracing the lines completely, you're banking off of someone else's hard work. Again, you're not using the original image as a tool, you're replacing your own creativity with someone else's. Like when Cello copied Norisuko's art for a stream commission. And that brings us back to Godai's backgrounds.
What's with all these cheaters in the cat box, am I right?
Godai's backgrounds could work if something was done with them. Had the images been flipped, had the colors been changed, or best of all, had the lines been traced, we would have no problem whatsoever. The tool is there to be used after all. But here, Godai didn't use the assets as a tool, he used them as a replacement. Instead of using them to help him make a background, he opted to just use the image in itself as the background. Nothing was done to change the asset, to make it Godai's own work, and he kept doing that for multiple frames on several pages. Nothing was done with these assets. And that's where my criticism lies. Again, use the tools you got to create your work. That's what they're there for. That's the standard for professionals in multiple fields, and for once, I can actually say that as my own personal experience. But never ever let it be a crutch. Don't let the tool do all the work for you. It's art. It's supposed to have a sense of self-expression. And how can it have that when you have had no input on the thing at all?
So how does all of this relate to Rooftop Swordmaster? Well, I'm glad you asked.
Everything, and I do mean everything, in Rooftop Swordmaster that is not a person is a 3D model or asset. Everything. It doesn't matter what it is, even shit you could easily draw by hand. Everything is a fucking 3D model. This phone, these stairs, this table, this bottle with a plastic cup on top of it. And that would have been fine if the artist wasn't so fucking lazy about it. I cannot believe someone thought this looked good enough to publish. Look at it. You have a comic that is distinguished by its thick, crude black lines. And you then do nothing to your 3D models that have ultra straight and pixel thin lines? Am I the only one who thinks this looks absolutely stupid?
Remember what I said about the whole tool versus replacement thing?
Now, I actually want to retract what I just said, because I don't want to say this is lazy, because Lord knows there's some bullshit about the Korean comic industry and the crunch they're under, but I will say that it looks lazy. It feels like there are times where they're just taking the easiest way out. The helicopters I brought up earlier are a great example of what I mean, because, well, look at them. No one is flying the fucking thing. Or this frame here where they're holding up pictures, but there's nothing done to make it look like a picture. No sheen, no bending of the photograph. It looks awful. Hey, remember how in Viral Hit I complained about them using the same frame multiple times? Well, guess what? This comic does that too.
Okay, so maybe I will say that it's lazy.
Even Sejong's sword is a shitty 3D model, and it's not even a cool looking sword. Like, okay, so it's got a handle, but other than that, it looks like your box standard sword you draw as a 6-year-old. Every now and again, the artist will try to give the model some perspective with horrible results. The pixels in the foreground will be all grungy and upscaled, and there'll be no depth of field to the pixels in the background. Seeing there's no difference in line thickness, there's also no sense of depth to the image. Every line of any 3D object is as thick as the other one, so even if something is in the background, it will have the same line thickness as something in the foreground. Every 3D object is also completely void of any form of proper shading, which just always makes it so that the object in question stands out like a sore thumb. And that's bad enough for interior shots or objects, but when you then try to do landscapes of any variety, I am half expecting to start hearing RuneScape music.
Have you heard of the High Elves?
There are just so many times where the laziest and easiest solution is done with little to no care put into the work. Like this image here where I don't even fucking know what went wrong. Why is the mirror image so sharp, but everything around it is grungy and ugly? Did you try to make a depth of field effect? Then why is the rest of the mirror also out of focus? This image just looks like a bunch of acids spread around haphazardly. I know the light stroke here is supposed to indicate the path Sejong's sword is traveling, but then why is it coming straight from the guard of the sword? And why does the path continue past the sword? Why the fuck does the Secret Service agent have a fucking 420 blazed background on her fucking work phone? Why is she even using a phone for communication? Shouldn't she be using an earpiece on a closed frequency? Why is this image just clearly a background scaled way up past its limits rather than just making a new one? Why is this image... Actually, just that. Why is this image?
I'm calling it lazy, but honestly, it feels like sometimes more effort was being put into making something 3D than it would have been just drawing it. So, is this a stylistic choice? Something that was a conscious decision? Are you fucking dumb?
Okay, so that's a honestly way too long talk about how shitty the 3D assets are for this comic. So let's instead talk about the actual art done for the comic. It's also bad. Now, don't get me wrong, it's leaps and bounds better than the trash that is the 3D models, but the art is just kind of dog shit when it comes to basic ass human anatomy. When you look at Baki for muscles, these guys look like absolute freakazoids, but it is for the most part real muscle groups taken to a ludicrous extreme. This is real anatomy with the slider turned way past its original threshold. But then you look at Rooftop Swordmaster and muscles just feel like they're added at random.
And honestly, that's whatever. You want to make a big strong McGee to a ludicrous extreme, I don't fully expect you to know every single muscle group to then enhance. But I do expect you to at least be able to make a normal looking fucking human being.
Now, I shared some images from Rooftop Swordmaster on my Discord that you should totally join if you want to have input on future Webcomic Relief episodes, because the anatomy just looked off, and my community was kind enough to help give some input on why exactly this was ass. Melissa deserves special shoutouts as they went above and beyond to redline exactly why characters looked off. Again, it's fine to mess up a hulking giant that defies reality, but to fuck up basic humans is just a weird thing for a professional comic artist to do. There's obvious creative liberties one can take, but when it causes the end product to look so bad that people like me, who don't know that much about anatomy, stop up and go, "What the fuck is this?" then you're doing a poor job. Torsos are constantly too long for the rest of the body. Heads are usually too small. Arms will be different thicknesses. Collarbones are up too high. Neck anatomy is just something the artist decided to ignore. Hair is often so high up it looks like that one dude from Mob 100, and faces fluctuate between having too much detail and too little.
If it is a stylistic choice, then it's a bad one. I legit wonder why, if they're so married to the idea of using 3D assets so much for their comic, why did they not just import 3D characters and then trace that? Because then it would at least look better. I am genuinely dumbstruck with what the fuck went on in the creators' heads with this comic.
As much flack as I'm giving Rooftop Swordmaster, and as much flack as it honestly deserves, I cannot deny that it does action pretty well. The artist does a great job in using the vertical format of the comic to make long images to the comic's benefit, often used to highlight Sejong's speed or strength. There are also specks of genuine, really solid choreography there, like when Sejong wall jumps between his sword or when he swings a launched car into another. If the writing didn't indicate that this was a comic all about the actual action and little about anything else, then that comes across easily in the art. Cause when the characters are just standing there and talking, it feels boring and lazy, but when the action is going, you don't really notice the fucked up anatomy or the lazy 3D assets, and instead just have fun with the chaos.
It's a small solace, but it's there, I suppose.
Also, if I was ever to give you a relationship advice, it'd be to find someone who loves you like the creator of this comic loves Tak Sejong. Because goddamn, if I thought the readers of this comic glazed this dude, it is nothing compared to how this comic chooses to portray Sejong in every and all instances. Post-transformation, there is not a single frame where they don't try to make Sejong look like the coolest dude in the world. It is to the point where it comes to the comic's detriment. Like they went so above and beyond to make Sejong look cool on top of this elevator that his presentation is in such stark contrast to the platform he's standing on that it just highlights how awful the elevator looks with his little choo-choo train pulley system. In fact, the comic is so insistent on portraying Sejong in a cool way that the man is physically incapable of not doing the superhero landing. Even when he has to close minimal distances, he'll use this as an excuse to do the superhero landing. It is fucking ridiculous.
Fuck. Oh, it is so not practical.
When everything is said and done, Rooftop Swordmaster's art is a slew of some of the most lazy shit I have seen in a manhwa. Some complete disregard for typical art practices and the occasional, oh that's neat, element drowned within. It is genuinely hard to enjoy the comic and appreciate the cool moments when it's constantly being surrounded by examples of the artist clearly not even bothering to try. I will not deny that just a cursory glance at the Korean webcomic scene will tell you that it is almost comparable to how bad the work situation is for manga artists, in that the creators are on the constant crunch to get a page out, and that is why you'll every now and again get shortcomings, and that comics like Viral Hit is absolutely indicative of creators being overwhelmed by the workload and thus have to make do with what they can. But I also don't think that Rooftop Swordmaster is indicative of this. It's not like they tried and then later had to take the easy way out. No, it was like that from the start. When I started writing the review for this comic, I initially wanted to look at the point where the comic first started using unaltered 3D assets, only to find out that it was literally used in the very first frame of the entire comic. I had only gotten aware of it when the hammerhead got stuck in the wall, but this shit had been there from the get-go. The time most creators want to put their best foot forward, and the creators decided to make an entire frame where a stylus has not touched the tablet a single fucking time.
So no, I'm not gonna buy that this is because of the manhwa industry where the creators just got overwhelmed because of deadlines and stuff. They had every opportunity in the world to put in at least a minimal amount of effort, but they made an active, conscious decision to not do that.
Rooftop Sword Master.
Girl, you have done it again. Constantly lowering the bar for us all and doing it flawlessly. I'd say I'm surprised, but I know who you are. I've seen it up close and personal. Girl, you make me so ashamed.
The first impression is a 5. I won't lie, I was invested at first. I thought it was cool to see a webcomic tackle a revenge plot, and the comic did a good job in setting up all the pieces needed to make this work. But it just did nothing with it and almost immediately showed how lazy and unstructured it was. The writing is a 4. While the revenge against bullies plot is not exactly a new thing, it feels like this comic failed to do anything creative with it. It feels like a lazy power fantasy that didn't know what it wanted to do other than having the protagonist do cool shit. The art is a 3. It is not the laziest art I've ever seen, but it's up there. The 3D assets are a massive detriment, and with how bad the regular art is, you start to see why they used it as much as they did. But I would still have preferred an attempt rather than this. All in all, the comic is a 4. This is one of those comics that is fun to read through and riff at with your friends, but that does not change the fact that it's a really shitty comic. There are much better alternatives out there, so give this one a pass.
Would I say that this comic is so bad that it's dangerous? Probably not. But it is still very fucking bad. It is fucking terrible, my guys. But it is the funny kind of terrible. The funny kind of terrible I warmly recommend people join their friends and then sit down and riff together with, because it is so bad. And if you end up doing that, please send some clips. I would love to see you guys' input on it. I'll see you guys in the next Webcomic Relief. Take care.
The wait is over. We are finally back with a new season of the Webcomic Relief. It has taken a little more time than I originally thought that it would, but frankly my life is just super busy at the moment, so I've been trying to squeeze in working on this new episode whenever I had the chance. So I hope that you guys will bear with me that it takes a little bit to make these videos. But speaking of videos, let's talk about the amazing people who helped sponsoring this one. Amidst the realm of dragons and destiny, a tale of forbidden love unfolds. Watch as passion and power collide, challenging a young dragon prince to choose between the call of his heart and the duty to his crown. Will love triumph in a world bound by ancient prophecies? Check out Scales of Fate and find out for yourself. Asholon Prime. Asholon hasn't gotten back to me about what they want me to push, so just know that they're freaking amazing. Send them some love if you can. Nicholas Knudson. Nicholas hasn't gotten back to me about what they want me to push, so for now just know that he's a really cool dude. Rojaru. Rojaru has finally taken the plunge into making comics, and you can now catch the 16-page prologue he made for the Sweet 16 comic contest on Newgrounds, which he plans to continue as his full comic. Please show him some love and check out the comic. Sebastian Venborg. Sebastian wants me to push the Twitter account Curious Zelda, which has a rich plethora of cute and funny cat images, because he's a cat guy. He doesn't own the account or anything, but he just really likes cats, so there you go. Afly. Afly hasn't gotten back to me about what they want me to push either, so you know the drill by now. They're just a super awesome person and deserves all the love. Hugo Junstrand. My boy Hugo has finally announced his original series, Torch Drop. It's a fantasy story where animals steal body parts from other species. It's still being produced, but you can check out the trailer in the description and see the amazing stuff Hugo has in store for you. Marshall Starr. DR, as we call him, is the artist behind the cool sci-fi comic called Marshall Starr. If you want some good old sci-fi western presented with some banging art, then this is the comic for you. Why Not Warrior. Why Not Warrior wants me to push the webcomic known as Hopebringer. The comic is about superheroes that gets into trouble and who has to save the universe from an evil empire known only as Spade. When the young girl Raylan gets targeted by this evil empire, she joins forces with her friends to take them down and save the galaxy. And of course, let's not forget to mention all these lovely people: Asofs, Caesar Sealat, Draker of Adrian, Nina Ha, Sasa Sketchy, Shiv, and Varatri. And of course, also a huge thank you to all the lovely people that you're seeing on screen right now. If you want to support the show, please go to my Patreon. Here you can donate anything you want every month and you'll get a ton of awesome rewards for it. Just go to www.patreon.com/Riser and remember, that's with 2 eyes. You can also go to TeePublic and get your hands on some webcomic relief merch. The link is in the description as well. If you want to watch me on Twitch, you can do so at twitch.tv/crownlessking, again with 2 eyes. Here you'll sometimes see dumb stuff like this happen. Oh shit! Oh fuck! If you do not want to support the show financially, at least think about liking the video, subscribing to the channel, or sharing your favorite webcomic relief episode with your friends. I'll see you guys at the next webcomic relief. Take care.